Someone with a 3 to 5 lakh per annum salary, what blueprint can you give them to achieve financial freedom?
If I have a 5 lakh rupee salary, I should not buy an iPhone. But unfortunately, the problem is excess of liquidity which is available. I have a credit card. I can buy it, but can I afford it?
Who do you think qualifies as being rich?
Very good question. From 2018 onwards, India has entered into a period called demographic dividend period. Fail as much as you want, learn as much as you want. पैसा आ जाएगा कि हमारा इन्फ्लेशन 5-6% के आसपास है, क्योंकि अगर मैं 6% एफडी कमा रहा हूँ, 30% टैक्स दे रहा हूँ, तो मैं वही परसेंट पे आ गया जितना इन्फ्लेशन है, तो मेरा पैसा खत्म हो जाए शायद.
So for someone who is a 20-year-old in college wants to do business in India, India में क्या business work करता है?
धंधा ही है भाई. इंडिया में सब काम करता है.
Sir, how does one plan for inflation, counter inflation?
So youngsters today are spending the money that they don't even have. You can keep on saying कि 10 करोड़ पहुंच जाएंगे 30 साल में. 30 साल बाद 10 करोड़ की वैल्यू नहीं बचेगी.
When your active income is so little, how can you plan for savings and then investing?
People of any income can plan for fire. For managing money, you don't need a lot of academic. Unfortunately, यहाँ पढ़ा लिखा भी common sense नहीं लगाता.
What have you seen are some money habits that rich people follow?
Interesting. Their motto is wealth creation, not cash generation. पैसा तो आएगा ही आएगा. India is on a growth path, but the next 30 is going to be the best period here. Our only challenge is,
if a 20-year-old starts their career today,
let's just not talk about a 20-year-old.
Right.
Maybe let's just talk about a 50-year-old.
What should they focus on? Wealth generation or cash flow generation?
So for a 20-year-old, I would say
Sir, to kick things off, can you just share your financial journey? Like जब आपने अपना career start किया था, what was your salary, to what money do you make today, and उसमें आपको कितना time and effort लगा है?
So I'm a qualified chartered accountant, first attempt. Usually when I speak to my team, I always tell them that attempts don't matter, you should qualify. But attempts do matter, and I'll cover it up in this part of the journey. So in 2009, I qualified. We used to do our internships at that time. CAs have to go through a rigorous 3-year training. So our first stipend check at that time used to be 500 rupees. Now that has gone up, but it's still lower than what the market salary should be. So typical CA article today will have anywhere between 5,000 to 15,000 in the first year. So that was the starting point. That first check was very, very critical.
Right.
Then, as luck would say, while I was trying to figure out this journey in 2009-10, a family friend, after the 8th recession, many expats came back to India. So they started an tech company. My early days, because I didn't have a corporate exposure, I had a CA firm exposure, but I had this insight that I got of how a company comes into a picture, right? How a big business starts taking shape. So I was introduced, a family friend took me, and these were IIT IIM gold medalist, IAS retired officers who have come back from US.
Right.
So the mindset was, oh my God, right? You are working with the best in the ecosystem. Let's learn. So we went into that journey. They raised about close to 15 million in 3 rounds across 3 years. They were building an edtech well before a startup ecosystem was a buzzword in India.
Yeah.
And there my salary was, I was a consultant there. It was about 30,000. That was my first big consultancy to start off with.
Right.
Of course, I was building my practice on the sidelines. But having 1-2 big clients early on makes a big difference.
Right.
Another mentor of mine came to me and said,
okay,
this is a co-working space coming up. So 91 Springboard was a company that brought co-working to India.
Right.
So we were encouraged to go and sit there and explore what's happening around, because co-working was also a new concept.
Correct.
Because aspiration was not that I want to match my market salary.
Right.
My market salary at that time could have been, say, 1.5 lakh rupees. But I was comfortable having 30-35,000 because I was building something. So that is where, in terms of personal financial journey, there is a concept of cash flow generation, and then there is concept of wealth generation. Wealth generation is a long-term concept.
Right.
So early on, my motive was wealth will generate. Right now, you have to manage your cash flows. So as you are learning and you're building a strong base so that you can have a wealth generation later on. So right from 750 rupee or 500 rupee check up to 30,000 rupee consultancy, we were able to, say, build out a practice structure where I was making about 50-60,000 in about 5 years time.
Right.
Like I use a term called cockroach startups, right?
Okay.
So you would have heard of unicorn, where valuations take shape.
Right.
In India, it's more of, I would say, we need more cockroach startups. So we became one first. What is cockroach startup? They will be there till eternity. They need no external support.
Right.
They are cash generating, but they might not have that bigger unicorn impact in the ecosystem.
Right.
They have a very critical impact, but they are on the sidebars hidden. And there are many like us. You would, if you just Google the word cockroach startups in India, you'll see very prominent names who call themselves a cockroach startup.
If a 20-year-old starts their career today, what should they focus on? Wealth generation or cash flow generation?
I would say the first has to be cash flow generation, right? And then the long-term vision needs to be aligned to this concept of Ikigai, right? And then there is conflicting stories that you will see where one side of philosophy says, even if you have a lot of money, you'll not have happiness. One side of philosophy says, go for something that you like and you blend it with Ikigai function that you will start making money if you do the thing that you like as a hobby also. Now, these are two different directions, right? So you will need to create a balance in your aspiration. It might take time for you to reap in money for the area of your own interest, but you might be happy doing it. Versus there could be a lot of cash flow in something that you don't like, but for the sake of wealth generation, I would say, where happiness index is missing, you might still want to go in that direction. So this generation, I would say, Gen Alpha especially, I would not count ourselves also, is more on, यार happiness चाहिए साथ में, पैसा भी चाहिए, लेकिन happiness भी चाहिए. So they'll figure out. I mean, typical example, let's start with you. You've done BTech, now you're doing a podcast, right? And you will see so many examples. Even I would say the dynamics of career is going to change altogether.
Right.
Take an example of a chartered accountant. If I don't know how to write prompts in AI, I am going to become redundant very soon, right? Now, from that aspect, if I like doing it, and there's, of course, wealth generation, it's a new field, I would be more than happy doing it. But then I have to do it because I don't have any other option. I'll create a wealth, but will I be happy or not is a cause of concern. So for a 20-year-old, I would say if they have means to take risk, they should take risk because 20 to 30 is the best time for failing. Fail as much as you want, learn as much as you want.
Right.
पैसा आ जाएगा. मतलब Indian dynamics में, Indian economy में is such an ample opportunity. From 2018 onwards, India has entered into a period called demographic dividend period. It sustains for 37 years. It's statistics. I'm not just hitting numbers like that. All developed countries have gone through it and they have seen staggering growth rate in that time. India just started off in 18. We are just about 7 years gone. 30 more in 3 decades left. And now imagine what lies ahead for India. So we've always been saying India is on a growth path, but the next 30 is going to be the best period here. Our only challenge is population, right? How will we manage this employment growth rate that we need? And that is why you need more job creators versus job seekers. And government is not just the only person responsible for it. And that is why for the 20-year-old, the startup and MSME segment is something very critical. क्योंकि job creation सारा mostly वहीं से होना चाहिए. And you need more job creators there. Now for a 20-year-old, whether to take that option of being a job creator, यार मेरे को थोड़ा struggle करना है, लेकिन I know I can build a company which can hire 1,000 folks. That's a mindset. Versus मेरा passion ये है, मेरे पास background, मेरे को घर भी चलाना है. I'm coming from a tier B, tier C city, maybe my family is not able to afford what risk I'm trying to take. So those are the risks that needs to be calculated. And then that 20-year-old will take a call. My personal take would be definitely a 20-year-old should take a little bit of experience before taking that risk, right? Unlike, say, I would not count exceptions. A Zepto founder who's a Stanford graduate and a Stanford dropout and then building those companies. But for somebody who's coming from a traditional background, yet to experience cities, corporate cultures, how things are shaping up, थोड़ा experience लेना ज़्यादा better है. 20 to 30 is a very good time to fail. Little bit of experience, then see which direction you are ready to take a risk in. But definitely go in that direction. Be ready to fail. It's okay to fail and learn, because once you get that drive of being a founder, you will definitely come back and start something new. Right? So whatever you are doing, happiness and mental health should be your primary concern. Money will flow on its own, right? Like the 3 Idiots thing. Right. Success के पीछे भागो, पैसा अपने पास हो जाता है.
Sir, you say that India is on a growth trend, but still the average salaries, if we talk about for an engineering graduate, they are about 3 to 5 lakhs per annum. And then you say कि you have to take risk if you have enough backing, enough wealth before you that you can afford to take that risk. So for someone who has a salary of 3 to 5 lakhs per annum, how can they decide whether they have the appetite to take that risk or not?
Good question, and I'll answer to the live case study I was discussing yesterday, right? So, typically, I would say a founder mindset person, he's in a job, B.Tech graduate, he has some ideas in mind, but not the resource pool or appetite to take a risk. They should continue on what they are doing, but as a sidebar, they should start at least doing proof of concept or problem solving, statement writing. Right? At least they should conceptualize the thing. Right? Go out and talk to peers and networks. So let's say talk about a B.Tech graduate.
Right.
All tech institutes have these, I would say, e-cells, right? Or they have these
Right.
startup cells,
Correct,
which are
yes.
there to support you, right? So it's not like you have to leave the job and do the business. You can, on the sidebar, start planning for it. Look out for what kind of resource pool you will need. Sidebar, start saving something that at least for 6 months, bare necessity should be met. So if I'm a salary of 50,000 to a lakh, if I'm able to save 25,000 for a period of 1 year, I have a 2.5 lakh to 3 lakh rupee corpus. So I can take a risk of 6 months on a personal side. Right. And if I am continuing to do the job, I will go and talk to people outside if I want to raise funds. And once I see some glimpse of hope that I will be able to raise, maybe then I'll be able to take a switch, which is the live case that has happened yesterday, where one of the founders had already quit. One founder did not quit. Right? They were able to have a term sheet. But the question again that the investor side will ask is, what's the skin in the game? If you're not able to take a risk by leaving your job, why are you taking my money?
Correct.
So it's a cat and mouse situation, but can be solved, which is the conviction of the founder, right? So if there is something that an investor will see, and you feel you can raise the first round, which is the most critical round to raise, highest risk involved, where you get angels. We can talk about more on that.
Right.
If you find the right angel, that angel will help you get you out from that trap and enter into that entrepreneurship role. इंडिया के अंदर सबसे अच्छी चीज़ ये हुई कि एंजल इन्वेस्टमेंट मेन स्ट्रीम में आ गया, आ जाएगा और भी, राइट? सो अर्ली इन्वेस्टमेंट रेस करना इंडिया में आज की डेट में आई वुड से डिफिकल्ट नहीं है. आपका फर्स्ट राउंड रेस करने के लिए भरमार है हिंदुस्तान में, राइट? आपको कहीं बाहर जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. और अगर फर्स्ट राउंड रेस करके कुछ प्रूफ करने की पोजीशन में आप आ जाते हैं, तो जैसे ही रेट कट्स होते हैं, लिक्विडिटी मार्केट में वापस आती है, तो वी विल सी न्यूअर राउंड, द फर्दर राउंड. सो अगर आप एक फंडिंग साइकिल की आप बात करो, तो यू रेज अ प्री सीड राउंड, देन सीड राउंड, एंजल राउंड, प्री सीरीज ए, सीरीज ए. तो प्री सीरीज ए तक आपके पास एक रिस्क एपेटाइट ज्यादा होता है इन्वेस्टर का, तो वो पोर्शन ऑफ कंपनी में ज्यादा लेता है. सीरीज ए इन्वेस्टमेंट तभी होता है जब, दैट्स पर माय नॉलेज, कि एक एस्टैब्लिश्ड ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड, यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स पॉजिटिविटी, ग्रोथ पाथ दिख रहा है, अब सिर्फ स्केल करना है उसको. सीरीज ए, सीरीज बी मनी या स्केल मनी, ग्रोथ मनी, राइट? Those rounds were not happening as much. But now if you see, you are again looking at people raising 18 million, 20 million. Right. Apps for Bharat raised some 18 million yesterday. Right. So these bigger rounds will also start happening now. Right. Good part is initial rounds के अंदर इंडिया में भरमार हुई है पिछले फ्रॉम कोविड टाइम टिल नाउ. तो पेडिग्री बहुत स्टार्टअप्स हैं जो नेक्स्ट राउंड रेस करने के लिए तैयार हैं. उसमें से बहुत स्टार्टअप्स हैं जो प्रॉफिटेबल हैं. राइट. तो जब अब लिक्विडिटी आती है, I believe unicorn numbers इंडिया में manifold बढ़ने वाले हैं.
So for someone who is a 20-year-old in college wants to do business in India, इंडिया में क्या business work करता है?
इंडिया में सब काम करता है. मतलब our population is not a, I would, it's a blessing in disguise for us, right? इंडिया में नहीं कर पाए तो कहाँ करोगे? Right? The whole world is jumping into India. Every month, so we incorporate about 200 to 300 startups every month with different partners. 5% of those startups are coming from foreign countries. Say foreign founders willing to start company in India. Or expats willing to start company in India. Or foreign companies willing to have offices in India. And these are not like bigger companies.
Right.
These are mid-sized players who are eyeing the India opportunity. Right? We always say India opportunity. Right? So for a 20-year-old, there could be few segments. It's dynamically changing a lot, right? People पहले AI आया तो AI उससे पहले D2C तो वो तो फैशन ट्रेंड है. But on the sidebar, if you see, climate change is a very big vertical, right? In fact, apps for Bharat का अगर आप देखो, they are working on spirituality side. In spiritual tourism, spirituality in India is a very, very big market of its own. Not just India, abroad as well. Right. We've taken it far and wide. So from that side, it's very, very dynamic, open option, right? And as we started off with, you need to figure out where your happiness lies.
Correct.
And just go for it. Right? It could be anything in India. There is market available. Right? Even for, I would say, SaaS founders,
Okay.
जो SaaS products बनाते हैं, उनके लिए भी स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट, क्योंकि रिसोर्स पूल यही है,
Right.
बाहर से बनवाएंगे उतनी कॉस्ट में बनेगा नहीं, दुनिया हमसे बनवा रही है,
Right.
राइट? तो बनाना तो यही है, टेस्ट भी यहीं करना है, मार्केट शायद बाहर हो, तो इंडिया लिंक तो होगा ही होगा। तो इसलिए इंडिया में नहीं अगर किया तो फिर कहीं और नहीं कर पाओगे।
आपने बोला इंडिया में एंजल इन्वेस्टिंग की भरमार है, राइट?
करेक्ट।
तो अगर कोई कॉलेज स्टूडेंट हैज एन आइडिया एंड वांट्स टू रेज फंड्स, हाउ कैन दे गो अबाउट डूइंग दैट?
Right. So when I say there is plenty of angel investing, let's go into a little bit of background. When did you hear about angel investing for the first time?
Around 3 years back.
But the term invest has been there forever, right?
Right.
And if you say, अगर हम फ्लिपकार्ट वाले एरा को बोल रहे हैं कि that was the starting era, तो वो तो 9 में भी था,
बिल्कुल,
right? Even Zomato, if you talk about संजीव विक्चंदानी ने जो exit लिया,
right.
तो वो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स बहुत पहले हुए हैं, राइट? 9 से लेके 17 तक इंडिया में काफी इन्वेस्टमेंट हुए, एंड देयर वर मेनी एंजल नेटवर्क्स, इंडिया एंजल्स, मुंबई एंजल्स, एंड देयर वाइज सिटी वाइज अब तो यू सी इट इन टायर बी सिटीज आल्सो, चंडीगढ़ एंजल्स, राइट? सो दीज आर दीज एंजल नेटवर्क्स दैट आर देयर. प्लस व्हाट आई सी इन आवर फील्ड, राइट, पीपल स्टार्टेड ऑफ ऑन फाउंडर साइड and then they pivoted and they went into the investor side.
Okay.
And they've done wonderfully well, right? So you talk about VCAT, you talk about V Founder Circle, right? There are many more, IPV, right? I can name n number of those.
Right.
But सबने एंजल इन्वेस्टमेंट को मेन स्ट्रीम में घुसाने का बहुत अच्छा एक इनिशिएटिव लिया था. बहुत अच्छा हुआ भी उसमें कि लोग जुड़े भी साथ में. And now if you say, even if you count about my portfolio, 10% of my portfolio is in angel investment.
Okay.
Usually now people are saying यार अपना 5% portfolio angel investment में डालो, right? Which is the norm coming out right now, that agar if you are diversified, you've reached a stage of fire or
Right.
independence, then explore the angel investment side also. Two ways. One, of course, as an angel you might find something you wanted to work on, you found good founders, you can go long.
Correct.
Right? Our country is in need of it, right? The more the merrier. कहने को हमारा ecosystem numbers में बहुत बड़ा है, and everybody knows everybody, right? I've seen that kind of a journey. So we might be the biggest Indian, I would say, startup ecosystem in the world in the times to come. But yet we'll be very, very confined and we'll know each other, right? So that's the kind of harmony Indian culture brings in that kind of dynamics. So angel investment, as per money terms, I would say is in plenty available now, because it's getting organized.
Right.
But the term angel itself is something that we need to understand a little more, right? Angel investment का मतलब earliest of the rounds वाला investment नहीं है. Angel investment is somebody has to go along.
Okay.
And to be honest, we say angel investors are those, if I have to define it, angel investment is the one that you write off as soon as you invest.
Okay.
You should not expect that money to come back, because that founder who's taken the risk of life and risk of building it, right? If you sit on his head like a traditional, say, founder or an investor asking questions in an AGM or exercising their rights, versus hand holding them, अच्छा तेरी क्या समस्या है, तेरे को मार्केटिंग में सपोर्ट चाहिए, अच्छा तू उससे जाके बात कर, मैं इससे तेरे को कनेक्ट करता हूँ, अच्छा नेक्स्ट राउंड के लिए लेट्स प्लान दिस वे, राइट? Those are the kind of discussions that should happen. फाइनेंस में अगले DD के लिए ऐसे रेडी हो जाओ, गलत नहीं होना चाहिए, right? Those are conversations that should happen. That is why they are called angels.
Right.
Two things. One, write off as soon as you invest. Of course, there could be a return, massive return, and act like an angel. That is why you are called an angel investor.
Correct. Versus
just putting the money in, and that's also angel, because being silent is also, I would say, in a category of being an angel, if you're not troubling the founder in day-to-day operation. But they need that kind of a handheld support. In founders will find such investors जिससे पैसा के साथ साथ ये एक एंजल टॉक भी जुड़े और आगे का ग्रोथ पाथ के लिए कुछ हैंड सपोर्ट मिले, राइट? सो फ्रॉम दैट स्टैंड पॉइंट, टायर 3 cities में भी देयर हैज बीन लॉट ऑफ नॉइज. स्ट्रक्चर्ड नेटवर्क्स एग्जिस्ट, यू कैन अप्लाई टू देम, वेरी स्ट्रक्चर्ड प्रोसेस.
Okay.
And like we say, pitch deck should be there, business plan should be there. So many networking opportunities open up, so many events are happening. So there is no dearth. As a founder, you just have to increase your lux surface area. Lux surface area means just go out, meet more people, network, and you will find your answers. Somehow or the other, you will find the right person, right? So from that standpoint, usually angel investors should be also selected very carefully
Okay.
in the terms that whether that person is someone who can leverage the industry or they are from that industry. Can they help us go to that journey of raising the next round?
Right.
How they can help us in our growth path? Versus if you get one wrong investor on a cap table, one of the biggest reasons of startup failures. So we'll talk about it in depth. What are the reasons for failures for
Right.
startup founders, right? So one point of raising funds, right? We started off with bootstrapping, best way.
Right.
Bootstrap, unit economics positive, जितनी जल्दी हो सके, get positivity, right? Scaling के लिए आप पैसा उठा रहे हो, no issues at all. Debt leverage कर रहे हो, no issues at all. किसी आप इन्वेस्टर को एज एंजल इन्वेस्टर को आप ग्रोथ के लिए लेके आ रहे हो अपने कैप टेबल पे, दैट दे विल हैंड होल्ड यू एंड जर्नी विल गो ऑन, नो इश्यूज एट ऑल. You've reached a stage of series A, you're raising money for growth, no issues. But if you're raising blindly, यार मेरे को स्टार्टअप करनी है, राइट, और मुझे पैसा रेज करना है, एंड देन picking up any idea I want, which is AI in the market, going out, and then the investor is also very inquisitive. AI मुझे भी इन्वेस्ट करना है AI में, AI है, चलो मैं AI में डाल देता हूँ. Those stories also exist, right? And they will get filtered out very soon. Our ecosystem is maturing very fast, right? So from, I think in terms of how to approach angel investor, one, references works. Incubation, if you're in an incubation or an acceleration, they will connect you. Then, as I said, the best part, network is net worth. Increase your luck surface area, meet as many people as you want, attend events, get to learn, and go with just don't go with the feeling of an ask. First, see whether you can give back to the investor or what they are looking for. And then the conversation is on a different tangent.
We also talked about SaaS startups. So for someone in college, सबसे पहला ख्याल तो ये आता है because start a SaaS startup because it's asset light. आपका कुछ inventory नहीं रखनी, stock नहीं रखना, सिर्फ एक software बनाया and you sell it out, right? But for a SaaS startup, how can someone go about raising funds? What is required to do that?
Very interesting question, right? Because like you said, asset light model.
Yep.
But in order to capture the market, you might need a lot of funds, right? And that is why SaaS is some investors' favorite line item to go to, right? Because as a techie, building a product for you could be just a human cost, or you know how the product can be built up,
right?
But how do you market that product? Is there is there an available competitor in the market? How big is the market? Are you bringing that disruption or not? So from that standpoint, a SaaS startup is an easy option to grow, right? And that is why putting in money in a startup, even if it is not revenue generating, people are okay that if your product is ready, Is there disruption? You're doing something different? Yes. What is lacking? Maybe going to the right market, doing the right marketing spends and all, right? So that is where there could be a initial investment of building the product itself, where engineering cost could be higher, developer cost could be higher.
Correct.
But once your product is ready, there is fair visibility ki demand to hai. There the investor will be willing to take a risk. Ki, let's go for it. Right? SaaS startup will take time to build, maybe 1 year, 2 years. Right? So we are ready to take that problem statement in hand.
Right.
If the beta market is tested, the first version of the product has been tested, then building the whole product will take money. They'll be willing to invest.
Correct.
But say SaaS is also a market where there is a lot of competition that will flow in very fast. SaaS is also a market where technology will kill you over.
Correct.
Right? So it's high risk also.
Correct.
So that is why a SaaS is a high risk, high return kind of a dynamic. And that's why investors will want to kind of play the right game ki risk lo to pura lo, nahi to rehne do. Something of that.
Is an idea enough to raise funds?
No, not at all. I can give you 100 ideas and all of them will be very lucrative. It's only and only implementation, right? It's only and only team, right? So when people will say, what's your fire? I would say once I would have built the team that I have dreamt of building, right? So ideas will come in your mind day in, day out. And when you talk to people who've not jumped the line, they will be the most inquisitive. Yaar, ye idea aa raha hai, tere ko kaisa lagta hai? And I always tell them, yaar, it's never about idea. I have myself tried 5 and I've failed in all of those, all 5 ideas. I've invested in 15, I still have to taste success. So it's not so easy. In angel investment, you will do 40, 50 investment. That's when you might see some exit. Right? Pehle investment mein, angel investment mein, that's why he said, he write off kar do bhai, pata nahi aayega ki nahi aayega, lekin aayega to bahut acha aayega. 40-50 इन्वेस्टमेंट करोगे तब जाके पता लगेगा कि क्या है एंजल इन्वेस्टमेंट. Same is the story here as well. Ideas तो जितने मर्जी आप ले आओ. If your implementation is not that great, then it's of no use at all.
So if someone's a salaried employee and wants to start a startup, the most important thing I have realized from this past half an hour or so is managing your funds effectively, right? So for someone who is again a salaried person, how can they manage their salary effectively or wisely? Like how can they reduce their spendings? How can they direction their cash into their startups?
So one is need to have good to have an expense. One is bare necessity. So for a founder, maybe bare necessity is what they will just focus on. Good to have, they will say यार कोई नहीं, एक बार बना लूँ फिर enjoy करूँगा, right? कि अभी नहीं जानना, गाड़ी नहीं लेनी अभी, right? अभी rent is okay, right? And then I would say I've seen many good stories even in married couples, right? People शादी बाद में करना, पहले settle तो हो जाओ. I've seen people taking risk even they just got married. Both of them took a risk. There are startups also. Both the founders are unicorn founders. So it's very subjective. But from that standpoint, from say a single founder, very young, right? Focus on bare necessity. Good to have will come, right? And even luxury will come. But you will have to figure out कि यार ये मेरी basic necessity meet हो जाए तो बाकी सब फिलहाल let's keep parking for future, right? And that appetite is something वो control गीता वाली बात, right? अपने senses को आप control में कैसे कर पाओगे? Do your numbers, do the budgeting, most important. Budgeting करो यार, 30,000 की सैलरी में नहीं बचेगा तो स्टार्टअप कहाँ से लाओगे? तो पहले let's figure out 30 से 1 लाख तक कैसे पहुंचे, या कोई एक्सटर्नल फाउंडर आप मतलब जॉब करते करते यू फिगर आउट एन एक्सटर्नल इन्वेस्टर, यार मेरी ये सैलरी है, मैं रिस्क नहीं ले सकता, ये मेरा एक आइडिया है, जॉब के साथ साथ मैंने इतना अचीव कर लिया, टेस्ट ट्रैक्शन में ला चुका, व्हाट डू यू से, शुड आई टेक अ रिस्क? मे बी यू फाइंड अ लक सरफेस एरिया गिव्स यू योर एंजल, ठीक है तू छोड़, आई एम विद यू, लेट्स आई विल बी योर को-फाउंडर, यू रन द शो, लेट मी बी जस्ट 20%, यू कीप 80%. दो स्टोरीज आल्सो कम इन. सो आई वुड से जस्ट बाय सेविंग सैलरी में से एक पोर्शन निकाल के मैं एक स्टार्टअप स्टार्ट कर लूंगा, वोंट हैपन. वो एक अपने आप को मेंटल आई वुड से सेटिस्फैक्शन देने के लिए अच्छा है, ख्वाब अच्छा है गालिब, लेकिन इट्स अ वेरी हाई रिस्क एरिया यार. यहाँ पे आई वुड से स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम में फाउंडर के पास अगले महीने सैलरी देने के लिए पैसे नहीं होते, लेकिन उसको वो भी फिगर आउट करना पड़ता है, तो अपनी सैलरी की बात वो कहाँ से कर लेगा? तो यहाँ इतना स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड नहीं है. यहाँ बहुत एक फाउंडर की लाइफ में बहुत स्ट्रगल्स है, राइट? बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रगल्स हैं, राइट? तो टू क्वांटिफाइड कि वो अपनी सैलरी में से कितने पैसे निकाल के एक अच्छी कंफर्टेबली स्टार्टअप चला पाएगा, नंबर्स इक्वेशंस बन जाएंगे, बट none of them will hold good. Right. It's very subjective and qualitative. It will boil down to founder mindset. कि कितना risk taking appetite उसके पास है, कितना conviction उसके पास है, क्योंकि अगर वो convicted है, risk taking उसके पास है, resources will start pooling in from somewhere. Correct. शायद अपने खुद ना हो, किसी और के होंगे. Right. Resource का कभी दिक्कत नहीं आएगी. Right. Even in our case, we've leveraged debt, but we've taken very very risky decisions sometimes in this 15-year journey also, and they have paid off. Right. I would say we would have not taken those risks. At what cost? Growth cost. Growth would have got compromised. We would have not reached this stage. I would not have been sitting with you. Maybe we took those risks. Right. Maybe we went out, increased our luck surface area, used external resources, built that framework, and that's where things started churning out. So I don't have any equation, to be frank. Right. And I don't even want to give an equation because that becomes a benchmark, right? Where I might have a disagreement to even other benchmarks that are being spread so far by the influencers, right? Startup ecosystem works very differently, boss, right? यहाँ पे conviction mindset matters more versus just पैसा कितना है, right? पैसा तो आएगा ही आएगा. Conviction matters more here. You talk about increasing your luck surface area. So obviously there's a component of luck to a startup being successful, right? Now, if someone failed while starting their startup but wants to try out being an angel investor, I think that's also a good option just from an investment standpoint, right? So how does one go about investing in startups as an angel? Like when should they do that? What should their personal corpus be for doing that? The problem with angel investment is small ticket size won't work. Right? That's also prevalent. I have also done small ticket size investment, but I'm realizing यार angel में पैसा बड़ा डालना चाहिए, तभी बात बनती है. बट मुझे छोटा पैसा भी डालना है, राइट, उसको डाइवर्सिफाई भी करना है, वी कॉल एट स्प्रे एंड पे, डालते चले जाओ, कोई ना कोई तो चल जाएगा, राइट. सो again here we can use an equation like I said, 5% of your portfolio should be
okay
angel investment. But मेरा portfolio 1 करोड़ का है, तो 5 लाख कितनों को दे दूंगा, right. So that is why I would say a portfolio of 10 crores to 50, starting 10 crores gives you a 50 lakh rupee budget to invest.
Right.
You can put in 25 into, or you can put in 10 startups, 5 lakhs each. You can diversify and you can start your journey. Right. That's where we will see some sort of a return kind of a thing also. Say, but there are of course exceptions. किसी ने 2 लाख रुपए डाले, एक ही इन्वेस्टमेंट करी और वो 2 करोड़ बन गई and something of that sort. Thus Dial was the case.
Right. Okay.
Amitabh Bachchan got very, I would say the kind of returns he got when it got listed versus what he got when he was a brand ambassador. There are many examples. Zomato's net worth, I would say, I don't have the exact number. 30% of net worth for InfoEdge, the company who's invested. Zomato's ka net worth is a major contributor to InfoEdge ka net worth.
Okay.
Right. So to begin with, I can play around कि मुझे करना है एंजल इन्वेस्टमेंट, सीखना कैसे होता है without the expectation return. Right. Then even a lakh rupee, 2 lakh rupee check, there would be people out who will be willing to take it. You have to find the right startup to do it. Okay. Or you can leverage these angel networks, right? अब यूजुअली स्टार्टअप्स का एक मिनिमम टिकट साइज भी होता है, okay. कि 5 लाख से कम किसी दिन लेना, जो 5 लाख भी नहीं डाल पा रहा तो हमारी क्या हेल्प करेगा, ये भी एक माइंडसेट है. अदर इज यार मेरे को उस बंदे से पैसा तो चाहिए ही नहीं, राइट, उसको कैप टेबल पे लाना है क्योंकि वो बंदा मेरे लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है. वहाँ आप 1 लाख रुपए डाल के भी आप एज अ स्टार्टअप फाउंडर आई वांट की तो यार छोटा चेक डाल दे लेकिन कैप टेबल पे आ जा, राइट. सो इट्स बोथ वेज, राइट. बट एज आई सेड कि इंडिया में एंजल इन्वेस्टमेंट किसी सैलरी क्लास को करना है, राइट, जिसको 5% पोर्टफोलियो बनाना है, तो नंबर्स आर स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड. 1 करोड़ के पोर्टफोलियो में 5 लाख ठीक है कर लो आप, बट वो 1 लाख रुपए 5 स्टार्टअप में डालो तो शायद डाइवर्सिफिकेशन आ जाएगा. वो एक ही में डालोगे तो 95% तो फेलियर रेट है, तो वो तो गए, राइट. आ गए तो वेल एंड गुड, बट 1 lakh in 5 startups you still diversify. Don't put your egg in one basket situation. But like I said, I would want to reach to a stage where I can give a minimum ticket size of 10 lakh rupees to a startup. That is when it will have a ripple effect. That's my take. I could be wrong.
Also, while investing in a startup, what do you look for in it as an angel?
I got this guru mantra. So another good story. So once I qualified, I also had a thought of going for MBA. But like I said, I've always had mentors all around me. So when 91 Spring Board happened, all 4 founders, so Varun is from Cornell, Pranay was IIT IIM. Okay. Anand was Stanford, right? And then they had other investor co-founders coming in, like Citibank, Ed and all. Right. So when you work with such a diverse management style and academic style, you get to learn a lot. And through this journey, this was just one example. I learn every day from these founders, and that's what I work for. Right. Now, what you look for early stage, there is no previous data, no historical data. You are just banking on the founder. So one guru mantra I got was team traction, market size. Okay. How good is the team? Second time founder है, first time founder है, academic background क्या है? Right. You need to go little in depth of the team. Like I said, लोग पहले team पे invest करते थे कि कुछ तो बना ही लेंगे. Right. Right. Second would be traction. कि traction is not only कि पैसा कमा रहे कि नहीं कमा रहे. एक ऐप है उस पे कितने लोग आए, वेबसाइट कितने लोग कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं, right. प्रोडक्ट है कितने लोगों के पास outreach है, visibility है. That is also traction. Right. And then the last one, which is the most important, market size. There are more dynamics to look at, but these 3 are critical. How big is the market? कि अगर वो आप इस टाइम SAM एक वो टर्म यूज करते हैं हम, टारगेट मार्केट, उसमें सर्विस कितना कर पाओगे, आपका कितना होगा, अगर उसके परसेंटेज को लगा के इतना बड़ा मार्केट साइज है कि आपका एक सिग्निफिकेंट मार्केट साइज बनता है, देन इट्स टीम ट्रैक्शन, मार्केट साइज, तीनों सॉल्व है. लेट्स इवैल्यूएट, राइट. बट इन तीनों में से कुछ भी चीज अगर क्वेश्चन मार्क है, राइट, नाउ तो इट्स वेरी इजी. टीम में भी आप, यू कैन गो बैक एंड देयर आर फाउंडर्स जस्ट आउट देयर रेजिंग फंड्स, 1 startup, 2 startup, 3 startup, 4 startup, and you get to know that there is some problem with execution. And they still get money, right? That's something to look at. Then there is this somebody coming in from a corporate background, right? जिसके पास sales, supply chain का vast experience है और उसी के अंदर एक problem statement लाके एक product बना रहा है. It's a straightforward कि पूरी 2 साल की मतलब टीम है, experience है. Correct. रिस्क टेकिंग एपेटाइट कम होगी, लेकिन चलो हम उसको साथ में सपोर्ट करते हैं। ट्रैक्शन उसने ऑलरेडी इस्टेब्लिश कर दिया, क्योंकि जिस इंडस्ट्री बैकग्राउंड से वो आ रहा था, ऑलरेडी की इकोसिस्टम प्लेयर्स को पिच कर चुका, उसके पास इंटरेस्ट है। एंड देन मार्केट साइज, ऑफ कोर्स सप्लाई चेन है, इंडिया है, डिमांड है। आई एम जस्ट गिविंग एन एग्जांपल. That's how you evaluate. And then early on, it's more on dilution. At this stage, when ना historical number है, market size का number है, history कुछ है नहीं, तो now comes about dilution. कितना परसेंट कंपनी आप निकाल सकते हो. एज अ फाउंडर आई वांट कि नहीं भाई ज़्यादा नहीं दे सकता, लेकिन लोग ब्लंडर कर जाते हैं यहाँ भी. 50% तक कंपनी फर्स्ट राउंड में दे देते हैं, राइट, बिकॉज किसी ने वो ज्ञान नहीं दिया. देयर इज इन्वेस्टर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट कि भाई मैं तेरी कंपनी में 50% इक्विटी होल्डर. तो द थंब रूल वी से इनिशियल राउंड में 10-15% से ऊपर डायल्यूशन मत करो, राइट. एंड दैट्स हाउ नेगोशिएशन शुड हैपन, दैट्स हाउ वैल्यूएशन शुड हैपन, राइट. सो yeah, I mean that's what we'll see. Traction, market size. There could be many more variables to look at, but this is what I prefer to look at, especially on the angel side, and that's how we've been investing so far as well.
So you've worked with so many founders and unicorns as well, you mentioned. So who do you think qualifies as being rich? Who is rich?
Very good question. So of course, in my own philosophy, money has got nothing to do with,
right.
I mean, there's a very famous video of Bob Marley also, where somebody is asking, are you rich? Then he's cross questioning, what is rich, right? So what is, first you need to define,
right.
So I'm very rich today. I would say nobody is richer than me. I've worked with more than 1,000 founders. I will continue to work with 10,000 more. That's my richness, right? And then money is in any case
right.
on the side,
right.
That's how I'll define rich. I figured out this is what I want to solve for. Am I able to solve it good? Luckily we get some signals that right. something is happening, because we've never gone out, done any sort of brand building per se,
right.
huge in the last 10 years or so, but there have been these references that keeps on popping up here and there, which is like, a founder has given that reference, we would have done something right. That's richness, right? That's, I would say, even for founders, it's the same story. For them, when they are building the product, when they get that acceptance, when they do that first big deal, when they build those recurring revenue models, right? I would say once they validated that their idea works, right? They've implemented it well. There is no bigger richness than that. Of course, they might fail also. But once they've tasted it, यार मेरे को implementation करनी आती है, then they are rich. They will make money somehow, because they know implementation. They know how to make a team. The biggest richness would be what team you have created.
Correct.
मतलब पैसा तो यार स्टॉक मार्केट में बैठ के मैं जितना कमा रहा हूँ, उस 50 लाख के कॉर्पस में मैं उससे 10 गुना कमा सकता हूँ, राइट. फ्यूचर एंड ऑप्शन थोड़ा बहुत आता है, इतना सीख भी लिया है लोगों. मतलब there are so many defined, algo trading is something which is prevalent, right. So to earn is not difficult for somebody who is academically qualified, just taking appetite. Difficult part is building the team. अगर टीम आपने बनाना सीख लिया और उसको सस्टेन करना सीख लिया, उससे बड़ी richness नहीं. That's how I will define it. Your richness lies in your team. The quality of your team, the quality of cohesiveness in your team is what defines your richness.
So now let's talk about a bit about personal finance. My audience is college students who have just started their careers mostly and want to save money, invest money, right? And with your experience, I'm sure we can help them.
Sure.
So let's say for someone with a 3 to 5 lakh per annum salary, what advice or blueprint can you give them to achieve financial freedom?
See, as we've already discussed, or I would say there's a lot of equation-based theories out in the market, right? If I have a 5 lakh rupee salary, I should not buy an iPhone. As simple as
right.
that. I can afford an Android because that's basic necessity. I can afford a OnePlus. That's something I should go for. Right. Unfortunately, the problem is excess of liquidity which is available. I have a credit card, so I can buy it.
Right.
But can I afford it is something that people don't even have in their definition. I've seen many youngsters. So there is this song called Kachang, 2002. China Twins. If you look at the lyrics, the one line that comes is spend the money that we don't possess. So youngsters today are spending the money that they don't even have, and they enter into a debt trap, right? So one debt trap is like, we've taken a fund, we've not been able to run a business per se, like we've been talking about startups, and we're not able to service this. The other is I have a 5 lakh rupee salary and a 10 lakh rupee credit card, which we are using and utilizing, and then taking another credit card to repay the previous one, and then entering into a debt trap. Then I get a message from these NBFCs, or now everybody is giving out personal loans,
Right.
one single click. Then I'll take that also, and then I'll use it to repay my card. So it's a huge trap. And coming out of it now, people, if you see, I see many ads on Instagram and all. I'll get you out of debt. One,
Right.
2, 3, 4 credit cards, and so of course, if it is so simple, why enter into that phase first? So don't spend things which you don't possess. Look at your affordability and then do your spends, right? Keep these two variables very very pervasive in your life, and उस हिसाब से आप अगर अपना खर्चा monthly plan कर रहे हो,
Right.
then your saving should come first, expense should come second, and then luxury comes third. इस segment में अगर आप इन 3 stages में अगर आप चल रहे हो, then I don't think you will ever enter into a debt trap. Plus, of course, the idea of how you need to grow from 5 lakhs to, so how your active income, yeah, it has to increase. So your active income focus has to be first.
Correct.
Then talk about passive income later on.
Correct. But sir, the question now comes is कि India में majority of the people, their active income is 30,000 a month, let's say, and then they have the responsibilities of the family. अभी पीछे वीडियो पे कमेंट आया था कि भाई बहन की शादी भी करानी है, हमें ये भी कराना है. तो when your active income is so little, how can you plan for savings and then investing and then looking towards the future to growing your money even?
Time horizon becomes a very critical part here, which is where goal-based investing comes in. And again, sharing a little bit of my experience. So I don't use Facebook except for 2 things.
Okay.
There is a community called Asan Ideas for Wealth.
Okay.
Very 2 gentlemen, Ashil Johari and Pattu sir is what they call them. And if you just look at the content, right, you'll get to see how people of any income can plan for FIRE or goal-based planning. Right. It's not a rocket science. You can learn on your own. So again, the challenge is the time horizon. If I have 10-15 years to plan something, 30,000, I can keep on increasing the income. Right. I can still do a goal-based investing. But I have something coming up in 6 months. I cannot do any planning, right? There everything fails out. So that is why we always say prepare a corpus which is for emergency use. 6 months. 6 months of your expense should be bare minimum available to you as a corpus. When you are starting up, you cannot have that. So that is how the goal-based investment helps you, or savings help you. That पहले corpus बनाएंगे, corpus के बाद education बनाएंगे, education के बाद घर के लिए बनाएंगे, and all of that happens. And it's a very structured way to do it. But as I said, right, given the inflation that we have, is that possible in 30,000? No doubt you can keep on saying कि 30,000 10 करोड़ पहुंच जाएंगे 30 साल में. 30 साल बाद 10 करोड़ की वैल्यू नहीं बचेगी, right? So you always have to, that's why I'm saying that this is going to be a little different talk, that your risk taking appetite needs to increase if you have those ambitions, right? And what you were talking about कि I have a sister's marriage coming up, घर का भी खर्चा चलाना है, those are very standardized problem statements, right? Which will not solve by 5,000 रुपये महीना सेव कर लो तो 6 महीने में आ जाएगा. उसके लिए आपको कुछ डायनामिक करना पड़ेगा, राइट? देयर यू विल आल्सो हैव टू लेवरेज लोन्स. इन अनऑर्गेनाइज्ड सेक्टर में तो इफ यू हर्ड ऑफ कमिटी सिस्टम्स, पीपल रन दीज सेल्फ कमिटीज, राइट? गो टू टायर बी सिटीज, लोग आपस में ही दे आर रनिंग एट देयर ओन एनबीएफसीज. 15-20 लोग मिलके एक अपना छोटा एनबीएफसी चला लेते हैं, एंड देन दे आर एबल टू मैनेज इट आल्सो. आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि वो दैट्स अ बैड डेट. I've seen them plan it very, very well, right? That's out of mainstream. I learned it a lot from that system. Yeah, ये क्या हो रहा है? Of course, it was very unorganized sector. Right. But if you see the dynamics of how it functions, you'll get to know that for managing money, you don't need a lot of academic, right? It's common sense that you need. Unfortunately, यहाँ पढ़ा लिखा भी common sense नहीं लगाता पैसा मैनेज करने के लिए. प्रॉब्लम वहाँ आ जाती है, right? So your question has no straightforward answer, क्योंकि वो it's an emergency situation. Right. But I would say मेरी sister की marriage 3 साल बाद है. Then I can still plan for it very, very well. Right? Because then I enter into a goal-based investment. Correct. कि मेरे पास 30,000 सैलरी है, करीबन 10-1 लाख रुपए आएगा 3 साल मिला के. उसमें से बेयर मिनिमम 5 लाख तो मुझे खुद के लिए चाहिए. 5 लाख बच रहा है बाकी जो मुझे इकट्ठा करना है. उसमें से मैरिज के लिए शायद 3 लाख चाहिए. उसको कैसे इन्वेस्ट करूँ कि 3 का 3.5 हो जाए. That planning you can do. बट 30,000 रुपये 6 महीने में 1,80,000 आना है, शादी का खर्चा 5 लाख है, वो कैसे करोगे आप मैनेज? वो those are not the right questions to even answer, I would say.
Sir, how does one plan for inflation, counter inflation?
Very interesting question, and that's where I think those equations for equity investment works the best. And India, as I said, next 30 years, being in this ecosystem, startup ecosystem, 15 years, I would say now I'm realizing I can make much more money on pure stock-based investments versus I will ever make in, say, startup ecosystem. In terms of, I would say, some event to happen for sure.
Hmm.
I might make more money in startup ecosystem, but I will make more money in stock investing, which is where you should take more risk early on. Debt, you can, as I said, you have reasons to fail.
Right.
Invest money in equity related mutual funds. If you can't do your own research in, say, stocks, go for equity oriented mutual funds. There is so much of study available. These apps are now giving you recommendations. Grow, Zerodha, and all of these apps have become so simple to do these investments. So start early, invest in equity. That is what will beat the inflation. Debt will never beat the inflation. But that mix should always be there. That if things not go right, what happens when there is adverse situation in market, then you should have certain leverage from debt, 20-30%, which can act as your emergency corpus. But staying long-term invested will definitely beat inflation. I've seen it. I myself might have a very different approach from the stock.
Right.
But I've seen it from my father's way of planning. When he left, I went into his dynamics of how he's invested money, and it was simply mind blowing. I'll give you an example. There is a thing called MIP in post office, which gives you 700 rupees per lakh, 8.4%. Right? So you do an MIP, then interest comes in the account, and then you invest the same amount into an SIP.
Okay.
Right? So your principal is intact, but from that return, you are investing into an equity based, right? And the returns were crazy there, right? I mean, this is one hack that I found very common now these days, right? Real estate was one, right? Now you cannot invest in Delhi, you cannot invest in Noida per se, but you have to find out, because India is growing far and wide.
Right.
Tier B is the biggest opportunity. Even Tier B rates, if you see, right, real estate is gone for the toss.
Right.
But I'm sure that there are real estate opportunities which are very, very lucrative, because India is now going decentralized into smaller cities as well. And that is where I believe the biggest opportunity lies. So maybe I'll diversify into real estate.
Okay.
Right? That will beat inflation. So I have to create a mix. Those, as I said, influencers are taking all equations, follow those. But it's very subjective, case to case, your risk appetite. Like in my case, 25% portfolio is in real estate.
Okay.
Right? 5% is in angel investment. So it's diversified. It's your own risk appetite that you want to take.
How does real estate investing pan out for you? What's your math on that?
Again, cash flow versus wealth. I need a steady cash flow income. Take a commercial property if your corpus allows you to, which gives you a steady state rental income.
Correct.
Because I need a passive income, right? Which is my passive income should match my active income.
Right.
अदर इज यार मेरा एक्टिव इनकम सफिशिएंट है, इसको पड़े रहने दो, लैंड लेते हैं, राइट? लैंड का एप्रिसिएशन कंपैरेटिवली ज्यादा आएगा, राइट? तो लैंड अगर कहीं मिल जाए तो लैंड में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं, ऐसी जगह जहाँ पे कुछ अनाउंस होना हो या डेवलपमेंट प्लान्ड हो, राइट? सो आई विल बाय अ लैंड देयर, राइट? So if you see, spiritual investment is another thing popping up. Ayodhya was 2,000 rupees, went up to 20,000, right? When as soon as the case verdict came out. All these, I would say, they are creating these. All these cities are getting a revamp. Kashi went through a revamp.
Right.
Vrindavan is going through a revamp. All these local cities are going through a revamp. That's one area I'm saying. Technology parks are coming up. Film cities coming up. In any case, if you see airport side, it's already ballooned out. Right. Launched at 4,000. Today at 60,000 in a span of 8 years. Right. So those are the opportunities that are available. I believe market is a little, I would say, inflated right now. There could be a little, you cannot time the market.
Of course.
There could be a little inflated market in real estate. It might correct. But of course, if you find the right place, then you just have to wait. It will give those returns.
So a basic question, why does inflation happen?
Yeah, that boils down to economics. One of not such a strong subject for me, but it's a cat and mouse situation, right? Low inflation is also not good, which means you're not growing. Right. It is a correlation to purchasing power of the people as well, right? So low inflation is also bad. High inflation is equally bad, and it is a dynamics of that will take us into philosophy going in that direction. The problem here is this is just 100-year-old history, right? 500 years back, who would have talked about inflation? Right. Nobody. We are just talking now when we have understood अच्छा कैपिटलिज्म नाम की चीज होती है, वहाँ पे लोन से ही पैसा बन सकता है, अब लोन पूरा यूएस लोन पे चल रहा है, right? So economics can define inflation very well, right? But where is that resource pool that we are dependent on coming from? Money is one resource pool. Ultimately वो resource pool तो वो 5 चीजें ही बचेंगी, right? जो लिमिटेड
Right.
अवेलेबल हैं जो हम एक्सप्लॉइट कर रहे हैं, राइट. The inflation is directly related to how your country is progressing, because more the purchasing power, right, more money people are getting, they are able to pay more, right. So, and then it's also a demand and supply situation. If you reduce if your supply is reduced, demand is more, then again the inflation will come up because people will start paying more for that product. So it's a function of many variables.
Correct.
That's why it happens. Demand supply gap, purchasing power parity. Developed versus developing countries. Japan just came out. They always had this inflation in negative. Now they are in positive, right? So it's a function of the growth path the economy is going through. That's why in India you will see these patterns. Now it's low. Again rate cut happens. Again money comes back into the market. Again people start buying. Again demand supply gaps come in. Again inflation goes up. Again central bank reduces the rate. So it's a cat and mouse story that keeps on going.
Right.
There are imbalances that get created because of adversity. COVID was one. People printed money. People brought down the rates. People increased the rates. All of those things happened.
Right.
So inflation happens because of economic reasons. You cannot time inflation. You can just be prepared for it.
Right.
आपका return आपके inflation number से ज़्यादा होना चाहिए. That is the golden rule.
Right.
कि हमारा inflation 5-6% के आसपास है. If I'm not wrong, would be lower, 4% now. That is why we are talking about rate cuts.
Right.
If you are able to beat this post tax, क्योंकि अगर मैं 6% FD पे कमा रहा हूँ, 30% टैक्स दे रहा हूँ, तो मैं वही परसेंट पे आ गया जितना इन्फ्लेशन है, तो मेरा पैसा खत्म हो जाए शायद. लेकिन मैं वही 15% टैक्स फ्री निकाल पा रहा हूँ, अगर निकाल पाया तो. वैसे अब कुछ टैक्स फ्री है नहीं, एवरीथिंग इज टैक्स. लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन इज ऑल्सो टैक्स, शॉर्ट टर्म कैपिटल गेन तो था ही टैक्स. तो अगर पोस्ट टैक्स में उस इन्फ्लेशन को बीट कर पा रहा हूँ तभी मेरा पैसा ग्रो कर रहा है, नहीं तो मेरा पैसा बैंक में तो खत्म ही हो जाना है.
How do people save on taxes?
Depends on what kind of income streams they have, and then of course they need to plan for it. The problem statement comes, so I'll flip the question, right? What is the necessary things people should have before taxes? They should definitely have a medical insurance.
Okay.
Which I'm surprised I don't see in a lot of the ideas that we see. Second is a good term life insurance, which is another bigger problem. Right? So I'm not talking about the ULIPs or the say market linked LICs. टर्म लाइफ है यार, खत्म हो गए तो वो कॉर्पस कौन देगा, राइट. ये दो चीजें तो आपको बेयर मिनिमम चाहिए. लकीली दोनों पे बेनिफिट्स है ओल्ड रिजीम में, राइट. अब लेकिन वी आर मूविंग इन टू अ डायरेक्शन वेयर न्यू रिजीम इज कमिंग इन. छोड़ो यार, जो करना है करो पैसे का, ठीक है, हम नहीं पूछे कुछ आपसे. तो पहले लोग टैक्स बचाने के लिए कर रहे थे. अब वो प्रॉब्लम भी आ जाएगी कि न्यू रिजीम में तो मुझे फायदा ही नहीं हो रहा, राइट. तो वो कहीं मिस ना हो जाए लोगों से. तो हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस और टर्म इंश्योरेंस इज द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन वी शुड आस्क पीपल व्हेन वी आर एजुकेटिंग. टैक्स बच जाएगा भाई, ये दो चीजें जरूर ले लेना. टैक्स ना भी बचे तो ये जरूर ले लेना. दीज वर टू थिंग्स इन सैलरीड केसेस व्हिच वर वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. एटीसी का एग्जेम्पशन था पूरा, आप ले सकते थे थ्रू इन्वेस्टमेंट्स, स्कूल फीस, होम लोन्स एंड ऑल. एटीडी का एग्जेम्पशन था व्हिच वाज मेडिक्लेम. मोस्ट ऑफ अस आर मूविंग टू न्यू रिजीम बिकॉज ओल्ड रिजीम में सिर्फ फायदा उसी का होगा जिसका एचआरए है, राइट. ओके. कि अगर मेजॉरिटी ऑफ योर एग्जाम्पशन इज कमिंग इन फ्रॉम एचआरए, या आपके पास कोई और सब्सटैंशियल रिडक्शन है, मेडिकल का 80 होगा, कि आपके घर में कोई डिपेंडेंट है जो मेडिकली डिपेंडेंट है, उसका सर्टिफिकेट है, ये एक्स्ट्रॉर्डिनरी अगर आपको रिडक्शंस मिल रहे हैं तो ओल्ड रिजीम फायदेमंद है. नहीं तो न्यू रिजीम में फायदा है, न्यू रिजीम में वो कुछ बोलते ही नहीं, राइट. तो वहाँ टैक्स सेविंग के लिए आपके पास अपॉर्चुनिटीज अब नहीं है. आप इन्वेस्ट करके टैक्स सेव नहीं कर रहे, वो वैसे ही स्लैब रेट कम हो गया. बट when you come to the opposite side where आप old regime यूज कर पा रहे हो, तो you see कि आप अगर रेंट पे कर रहे हो तो एचआरए का एग्जेम्पशन मिल रहा है आपको. एटीडी एटीसी आप पूरा करना ही चाहिए आपको अगर आपकी सैलरी इनकम आपको अलाउ करती है. अपार्ट फ्रॉम इट आपका कोई एजुकेशन लोन है, होम लोन है, ऑल दोज थिंग्स विल कम इनटू पिक्चर, राइट. अगर इतना कुछ है तो ओल्ड रिजीम आप कंसिडर करोगे. और अगर इसमें से कुछ नहीं है और न्यू रिजीम में फायदेमंद है, तो ये सब तो गवर्नमेंट आपसे पूछ ही नहीं दिया, ये आप खुद के लिए कर रहे हो. So it has become more, I would say, with new regime, it has become more important for you to look at the कि अगर मैं ओल्ड regime में टैक्स सेव करने के लिए भी करता तो क्या क्या करता. अब वो मुझे खुद के लिए करना है, तो करना तो है ही, राइट. So to save on taxes in new regime, I don't think a lot of things are now there because the new regime is meant to take no deductions. Right. Old regime में you have to evaluate HRA, you have to evaluate ATC, which is your life insurance, school fees, housing loan repayment, and a lot of other things. You should look at education loan if you have any, and you should look at donations. You can look at mediclaim, you can look at medical expenditure of dependents. All these can help you save taxes. Right. And for new regime, there is nothing. This is for salaried.
What have you seen are some money habits that rich people follow?
Interesting. They will always be dependent on capital appreciation, right? So how do you feel Elon Musk make money? Salary? Or how, if you see people like, so Oyo is a perfect example where Ritesh has bought his own shares
Right.
by taking loan from bank. Right? I mean, such a big risk.
Right.
That's how rich work. They see wealth in asset. They create assets. Let that asset category increase, and that will become a revenue generating passive income per se, right?
Right.
So a rich will never think about मुझे आज इतना पैसा कमाना है, active income. Rich will focus on the asset and churning those assets to generate the maximum returns. So they already have an investment base. They will see how they can diversify to make the maximum return.
Right.
Right. It could be from dividends. It could be from collateral. They'll keep their investments as collateral and take loans from bank because they know that their investments are going to beat the bank interest.
Right.
That also happens, right? So rich thinks totally different. This was, I think, in Rich Dad Poor Dad also, right? I don't agree to all of that, but like they said, good loans and bad loans,
right?
Make assets, revenue generating assets. Rich thinks a totally different direction, right? So their motto is wealth creation, not cash generation, just cash generation.
All right. So moving towards the end, sir, what do you feel defines whether a person will be successful or not?
I think we've already discussed who's rich, right? Right. So success is very subjective for everybody, right? You can see n number of examples where people, multimillionaire, committed suicide. And you would see very smiling faces on the road who have nothing in their pockets. So definition of success is very, very subjective. It's aspirational.
Right.
So if you're aspiring for something and you've achieved it, I'm not talking about monetary terms. In terms of Ekagai, right?
Right.
This is, I like doing this. And now there is such a big team with me and we've influenced, or I would say, even if you are not there, there is something that will have your presence or the presence of your thought. I would say that's success. Right? You will go out, people, I mean, like again, historically, people have been there. You talk about a few, you don't talk about a lot, but you have the ideas that you will always talk forever.
Right.
Right. So what are you leaving behind in terms of those ideas? I would say that's parameter of a success for me. People can have their own definitions.
Finally, if you could share one piece of advice for someone in their 20s, it can be anything, not just for finance or startups, anything you feel.
Take risk in 20 to 30, fail as much as you want. India is land of opportunities, right? But right now, Indians will make wealth, not foreigners.
Right.
So we are again in that phase where we are going to dominate. Power shifts are happening. इससे अच्छा time नहीं हो सकता risk लेने का. So don't worry about failure. Go out and take risk. Don't worry कि मैं fail हो गया तो मैं दोबारा job कैसे करूँगा. There is ample opportunity in India. You will find something. Just be positive, be aspirational, and try to be a job creator versus a job seeker, because there will not be many. But if you are one of them, you've taken up the responsibility and you will be appreciated for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sambhav sir, for coming to the studio, sharing your experience, insights with my audience. I loved it. I'm sure they must have loved it as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.